but it was really so rewarding. And also just walking into the experience, it's one of those things, because I'm there very little time, and when you walk onto a train that's moving, you don't really know what the car is going to be like. And it was so clear that this was special. I already knew it was special because of how ambitious it was. But then you walked on set and just the way everybody treated each other, the way, it was just so clear that they had done the thing that you hope to do with a film like this and created a family, and everyone was working towards the same thing. It was just like an incredibly beautiful experience to walk into.
Thank you all so much for being here. RaMell, I was wondering if I could start with you. The perspective, obviously, in the film is so extraordinary. Tell me a little bit about how you came to sort of the idea of how you were going to make this film.
Yeah. Thanks for staying. I always say that, but like, favorite Jay-Z line is, I'll wait for the back. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. So POV, the film, I think, one thing that if you all have seen any of my previous work or know of anything I've done I'm interested in is subjectivity in the camera, the language of aesthetics and form and authorship and power and these dynamics that exist with the lens. And Coulson's narrative is so complete. It's like intimidatingly complete, because it's terse. It's not like Floral, where there's just like, he's like almost playing with like language. He's like using really direct stuff. And so the idea to put actual, what one could call Black subjectivity, whatever that is, it's still unknown, into like commercial space, into his narrative, to me, it actually just makes sense. Yeah. Like almost nothing else makes sense. And I'm unsure if I would have been able to make this film without doing it that way. Because I look at myself in my daily body and I can quite easily just be like, my name is Elwood. And then I'm that character, And so taking images from my childhood, giving them to Elwood, us sort of sharing a vision, seemed natural.
I was wondering, maybe Ethan and Brandon, you can sort of join in. What was the casting process like to find Elwood and Turner?
She said join in. She didn't say start.
Well, so, wait. So to them, these guys, right? Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, the casting process was pretty standard, and I sent a self-tape into the ether, and then I familiarized myself with I was able to receive the script and read that, and picked up the book after sending the tape, and started to read it. And the more I got into the book, after reading the script, I was like, man, I really hope I didn't send it just into the ether. I hope that I'm able to move forward in this process and hopefully get it. And then came the Zoom callback, which was honestly one of the better Zoom callbacks that I've ever experienced. Shout out Vicky Thomas. And then the chemistry read with Brandon, which was a really great experience. It was really fun to be in the room with him and play with the scenes that we had. And I thought that I lost the role. I thought that I did not get it, because at the end of the audition, RaMell was saying, everyone was saying their goodbyes, and then RaMell over Zoom was like, Brandon, I'll talk to you later. And I was like, all right, is he gonna talk to me later? I didn't get one of those. So I was like, well, okay, well, this was fun. And I know Brandon had a different, kind of feeling after walking out, but I still had a really wonderful time in that room, and whatever we conjured up in there led to, both of us getting these roles.
Brandon, what was it like from your perspective?
No, yeah, I felt pretty confident. RaMell was like, Brandon, I'll see you later. And I was like, fantastic. It was similar. I threw it out to the ether. It felt like one of those, I don't know, that just fit somehow. Sometimes you read something and you're like, oh yeah, I could see that. And like I could see this world working and blending into this world. And then I did a chemistry read in New Orleans, actually, with a different actor who was also lovely. And we did, like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 hours of it.
Long time.
And I was like, all right, well, we did the movie. I'm done now. We're good. But I'm glad we kept going because then I got to play with Ethan. And he was unsure, but I was pretty confident afterwards. After just seeing Ethan and feeling that energy in the room, that I don't know what the other factors were, but I was pretty sure we were gonna make a movie. Yeah.
I mean, this is such a unique script and such a kind of unique sort of way of filmmaking. So I was wondering, Aunjuanue, David, Fred, and Hamish, if you could talk a little bit about sort of what your reaction to the script was when it came to you.
I just thought it was, I could see it. It was just, everything was just evocative and visual, and I could feel the place, I could feel the pathos, I could feel it all. And you know, I wasn't that particularly interested in I think you said this, that it becomes bigger than what part am I playing, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was beautiful. It was like really beautiful to read, and I had read the novel also, and so it was such a, adapting a novel is pretty much impossible, and so to see that way of solving that puzzle was just like, I don't know, I was just all of my nerd lights were going off. It was just like, I just want to talk about this. It was just so cool. So yeah, I was really ready to do whatever RaMell wanted me to do. I was like, yeah, I just want to be close to this thing. I did not think it was going to work. It was actually the honest, truth. I was like, this is a huge swing, and that's why I want to be a part of it. But I didn't understand how it was going to work until he sent me a couple of dailies beforehand, before I went out there, and I said, oh my God, this really works. It was immediately one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen.
Fred and Hamish, can you talk a little bit about how you got involved?
Yeah, I shout out to RaMell's first movie, Hale County This Morning, This Evening, which when I saw, and images vibrated alive long after seeing it. So it felt like a movie that not only did you experience, but also stuck with you for years and years. So then when I heard about this and read the script that we're all talking about, which was also hyper specific and an experience to read. We were just standing in the outside before you called us in, and I could hear the beautiful music at the end that was in the script, and a lot of those archival images were specifically listed, so you could look up on your computer as you were reading them and see these real archives. And so it was transformative and kind of an experience to read it, separate of the desire to dive in and become a part of that environment.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of the book, and the script was so faithful to the book, and the remarkable use of the POV, sort of cinematically solved how you're going to tell the end of the book. It was just such a brilliant script, and actually. It felt in making the movie. Am I just loud, or is this? No, it's a very sensitive microphone. I love it. In making it, it felt so because you didn't know where the camera was and you didn't really know what was happening. And then it was what RaMell and Jocelyn had written, scene for scene and almost archive for archive, going through. I mean, maybe I'm sure that's not true, but it's one of the most faithful films to its script that you would ever come across, and that's a very neat trick. And I just want to say that this is one of those movies you do all the other movies to be asked to be a part of, and not just because of the subject matter, but because of working with an artist like RaMell and all the people up on this stage. I mean, it's. It's not an important movie because it isn't important, but people get scared when you say it's important. It's surprise important. I mean, it's such an experience. I find as a fan of the movie and also a participant.
RaMell, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about sort of the archival material. For those who don't know, you have a background in documentary, and so I was wondering sort of if you could talk a little bit about how you, as they were talking, like how you started to incorporate that into the script, why you wanted to use it, and whether or not that evolved sort of as you were making the film.
Yeah, the archive is such a fraught and complicated space, specifically for people of color. You know, I think everyone here is aware of the power dynamics of the camera. And I like to call photography and film, it's weird, because when I talk about photography and film, I sound like a hater and like a cynic and a skeptic, but it's only to like talk about it in ways in which everyone else doesn't. And everyone's just like, oh my God, photography is amazing. Let's take a picture of a homeless person. You know, and you're just like, cool, but also, let's talk first, you know? I call photography and film the technology of racism. And so if you think about, and to answer the question at length, to me what that means is that in order to prove racism, because it's not something that's actually real, you need proof. So you give someone an idea, you take a picture of someone, and then you hand it to them, and then they're allowed to imagine within that framework you've given them everything that's possible. And that is, to me, the technology, the exchange that happens. And so the archive is a space in which people of color in particular have been fundamentally othered by the directionality of the camera, but also have been just captured into these narratives of social science or phrenology or profiles or news or all the things that have assisted with society being organized, not all of them nefarious, some of them matter of fact, some of them utilitarian, but it's not a space in which people of color go back and look and being like, that's what it was like to live back there. Like, that was a happy time for us. That was like the love that we showed our family. Like, I'm proud of the way in which my world existed as visualized through this in time. Just not the case. And so with that being said, an idea that Joss and I had was like, can you rescue people from the archive? And to rescue someone from the archive, and also, like, there are many, many scholars that do archival work. I'm sure all of you know this. Like, some of the stuff that I'm saying is like art world talk kind of brought into a more commercial space. And so I don't want to take credit for, thinking about the archive in an interesting way. Like, the information is out there. But to rescue someone from the archive is like, so someone who's captured in a moment in which the power dynamic is fraught, where they don't have much power, they're a little bit shy, they don't have permission to be shot, whatever. Find a moment that is like deeply human, deeply, I like to say the epic banal, something that has like this really strange, visceral, unexpected, like when someone, they're being filmed and then like you see their eyes like go to the left and like look at the camera really quick and then like go back. Like those moments where there's like a kind of consciousness there. Find those moments in archives. Also use beautiful moments from the Black Family Archive, which is the space in which Black people were allowed to really represent themselves for each other in our own families. And then bring those into what the fiction film and what Coulson's narrative is, because it's so long. The film itself, the film and the system that produced the behavior that people enact towards Elwood and Turner is contingent to photography and film. Like, they're related, right? Like, they needed to be visualized to be demonized or to be dehumanized previously. Like, it's one big constant flow. We all know this. And so it's easy to watch fiction films and to just have this dramatic, traumatic exchange experience with this narrative, and then it'd be devastating, and to like go back into the world and like they just don't connect necessarily. I mean, they do, obviously. You watch it in the real world. You're sitting beside real people. You're breathing real air. But if you can bring the archive and these moments that are a little bit unexpected into these things, then like that bridge is closer, and that contingency is just more evident, And so that was one of the core reasons to do it. The process is almost impossible and quite difficult. We actually started the archival process as we started writing because we knew it would take many years. But yeah.
I was wondering, Ethan and Brandon, can you talk a little bit about sort of the acting process when the camera was you, if that makes sense. Like what was it like, sort of when the camera was Elwood's eyes, when the camera was Turner's eyes? Like how did that work for you sort of in the process of shooting?
We had to shout out our cinematographer, Jomo Frey. He did really, clap, yeah. Just phenomenal work. Fred was actually speaking about this a little earlier. We kind of got the opportunity to also be cinematographers or camera operators during this process, and Jomo got the opportunity to also kind of be an actor. And so in those moments where it was our perspective, we would be really, really close to Jomo. Right, there were a lot of moments where we were right up next to him, as close to the camera as we can possibly be, so that we were able to be very present for each other, and still able to give whatever necessary so that the person that was speaking to the camera had something to work with. So I know that every time I was off camera, it wasn't like I was very much there. I wasn't trying to like half-ass anything. I wanted to really be there for Brandon, and so for that meant like lending my voice and making sure that the things that Elwood were saying were clear, so that he can't see my face, but he can have a good idea of how I'm of what it may look like when this line is delivered. And
Can you talk a little bit about what it was like for you?
Yeah, similarly, off camera.
Both, honestly. I'd love to also hear from the rest of the cast about sort of your experience. And
similarly, it was just when we were off camera, it was very much just about remaining present with him and like not kind of floating off. And as you so eloquently worded, half-assing it. But also, there was something that I think neither Ethan nor I did that Aunjuanue actually did when I was off camera one time. She asked me to put my arm out to create this physical connection, because there's so much of that lacking when we just have to respond to a camera. And even being off camera, that brought me into it so much more. It was, I don't think, we never talked about it, but thank you. So that was how it was off camera.
Aunjuanue, can you talk about that moment and sort of how you found the character, how you found your character sort of in this setup?
I feel like I'm Johnny Carson. I don't want to just BS you. I did a lot of what I tried to build in Hattie, honestly, came when I was shooting. Honestly. And I think because, first of all, I did not know from reading it that we were going to shoot it the way that we were going to shoot it. And I didn't know that until I got to set in Louisiana. So a lot of my preconceptions I had to throw out of the window. A lot of the things that I lean into as a doer of this job, I couldn't lean into, like being able to touch someone, being able to look into someone's eyes. I couldn't do any of those things. And there was, how do you use, as opposed to feeling like isolation is an enemy of your job, how do you employ it in doing your job? And that was a lot of what I had to kind of learn in playing a part.
David, I want to come back to you because obviously there's sort of a different setup, but Fred and Hamish, can you talk a little bit about sort of what that was like for you?
Yeah, the thing that Ethan was talking about was really amazing to see from both Brain and Ethan, because they really did become operators, and Jomo sometimes became an actor, and the line between those two things, I think in the same way that this massive experimental choice, risk, feeling was put on paper, it became so physicalized in the experience of filming it that way, where the roles of who controls the gaze is actualized, and then I felt that in a lot of ways as an actor, which is, you just really think about when you are looking at someone, you're so aware of yourself for the first time when you're looking at them, and the violence of that, the power of that, the fear of that, all of these things, it's like there's this total underline to the act of looking at someone.
Hamish, did you have a similar experience?
Yeah.
Was there anything specific that you wanted to add?
No, I had a very similar experience to Aunjuanue, like showing up and being like, and then my coverage, and then no, that didn't happen, and then I was like, oh, this is good. This will be good. And it was just, look, it was so beautiful being there, because you were just, I didn't know where the camera was a lot of the time. And I was just having this relationship kind of with RaMell, where he would say something, I would just throw myself into the lacuna of his great brain. We were talking about the word lacuna before coming out, and I was wondering if I could work it into...
I'm quite impressed. I know Fred too, because wow.
But that's, I mean, I really didn't know what was going to happen. At first, I sort of like had a plan, and then it would just be, there's an alligator there. The alligator was supposed to actually, on the page, just go down the hallway, outside. And
I fooled them all, Hamish. I fooled them all.
It's like, it'd be better in the room. And it was so snappy with the jaws, and then he was also like, and just make up what you're saying, and it really was hard, but joyful. I mean, it's just joyful. I mean, there's so much. I don't know. It was so miserable playing this part, and so joyful working with RaMell and the camera, and it was very split brain.
RaMell and David, I was wondering if you could talk, RaMell, about sort of where the idea of how you were going to deal with what is, essentially the twist of the story, and how you thought about that in the context of filming. And David, I was wondering if you could talk about, obviously we see the back of your head for most of the film, and what that was like.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, upon reading it, and I thought it was potentially incredibly brilliant how this reveal was working, but I did not understand what he was talking about when he was talking about how the rig functioned and everything. And so I didn't, but it was also the reason I wanted to do it, And so when I got on set and put it on for the first time, I said, oh, this is wild. And I had seen sort of some of the POV stuff already, and just didn't want to mess it up. And so it became for me, a really technical experience in a lot of ways, but also one that was it was so much fun, and it was nerve-wracking because, again, like, they had already established a visual language that I was obsessed with. And so it was mostly about, like, well, I'm kind of slouchy anyway. I don't know how that reads. And, like, also, how does that relate to these two actors? How much is giving away too much about which one like, there are all sorts of physical choices that I am confident don't read at all. But, like, for me, like, it was the whole thing, like, where is your arm in frame? Where is it not in frame? And now my scene partner, is, and I am generally, for film stuff, I think the way I get over my kind of still, I think, not full understanding of the camera, and this was actually super useful for helping me with that. But I'm a theater guy, and one of the ways I like get over it is by just trying to be whatever my scene partner needs. And so this was like that times 1,000, because it was like, well, I need to make sure they're on screen when they need to be on screen, but also it should look like POV, and you don't look at somebody all the time. So it was just incredibly technical and super fun, and got me out of my head a little bit. And yeah, but it was really so rewarding, and also just walking into the experience. It's one of those things, because I'm there very little time, and when you walk onto a train that's moving, you don't really know what the car is going to be like. And it was so clear that this was special. I already knew it was special because of how ambitious it was. But then you walked on set, and just the way everybody treated each other, the way, it was just so clear that they had done the thing that you hope to do with a film like this, and created a family, and everyone was working towards the same thing. It was just like an incredibly beautiful experience to walk into.
Just to close, RaMell, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about sort of the concept behind how you wanted to handle the question of older Elwood.
Yeah, that was incredibly challenging, because, I mean, as scripted, like the Snorri cam is not scripted. I think it's probably the only visual element, formal element of the film that wasn't pre-considered. But once Jomo and I started to, we spent like a month with my DSLR, going through how to execute the hug, right? Go do it. I'd do it on Jomo. Jomo would do it on me. We'd be like, well, looks, because obviously you can't reproduce it, but like what feigns it so that a person's not like, that's not a hug, but is also like, that kind of feels like a hug. Like, you don't want to be literal, but you also don't want to be too abstract. Yeah. And we came to the point where we were like, if we're shooting David's character, adult Elwood, we called them in the script, with the same camera language as all the other ones, that's going to be the tipping point for confusion. And we already, I don't think that the film is confusing in a traditional sense, but it's definitely confusing at that point in a traditional sense, It's complex, I think. I think it asks you to pay attention. It asks you to read the images and to be present in a way. I'm experiencing the Hamish mic thing.
When did you pull the mic away?
Yeah,
right. It's cool.
These mics. This is AI. It's an AI mic. So I think Jomo was like, well. Oh, he was like, this is what he was showing me like all the possible options for camera things. And he was like, we could put the Snorri cam, we could use a Snorri cam. What the hell's a Snorri cam? When people are like doing crazy stuff in the films and they're like, want to have like a Requiem for a Dream, chaotic physical moment. And then we were like, because Jomo was a fan of Hale County. Yeah. And we were like, well, there's 2 scenes in Hale County in which they're completely shot over the shoulder. One, I'm like following Daniel, and another one, he's sitting on the bench. And then it just kind of like clicked where we're like, if we could reveal the identity, conceal the identity, we could push or like try to like mislead by having Elwood's name said many times. So it actually helps the ploy, but then it also gives us a form, but also conceptually, it's probably, I think, the most interesting element of the film, in that it's still POV to us, because the second that Turner takes Elwood's personality, his like identity, there is, one could argue, like a psychological separation from self then. Yeah. And so it becomes an actual illustration of the break between being internally yourself and whatever else you want to call it. So then, obviously, once Elwood gets shot and we pop back to the Snorri, we're like, it's going to be like such a beautiful collapse. Kind of just all made sense. I think that was like, once we realized that collapse would happen, and that the moment is illustratively legible at the shooting, we're like, I think we accomplished it, if it's done well, Yeah.
Well, we have to wrap up. Thank you all so much for your time, and thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.